All right. Hello, everybody. There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are here tonight to go over our edible mushrooms of Nebraska talk. My name's Morgan. I am a Conservation Nebraska Common Ground Program AmeriCorps member. My goodness. I'm going to go over a few items here while we have folks logging in and before I introduce Bob. So like I said, my name is Morgan. I am with Conservation Nebraska. Our mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement. The Common Ground program educates Nebraskans across the state about our conservation issues and how our communities are being faced with those. We also are trying to provide all of you with the tools needed so that we can improve our local environment. We do this, through locally led education efforts such as this webinar tonight. So thank you very much for attending. But we also have workshops and film screenings, community engagement such as park cleanups, letter writing, and outreach events to address local conservation concerns. Before we get into the presentation, I do have a few housekeeping things to go over. Please, just so everyone's on the same page, your cameras are off and your microphones will be muted. If you have a question, though, for Bob, we will try to address those as we go through the webinar. We may get some time at the end as well, too. So feel free to drop those in the Q&A section or the chat, excuse me. At the end of this, while we're discussing and going over some stuff, we will also have a very brief survey, which we really appreciate if you take the time to do that so I can continue to invite Bob back and other speakers to do events like these. So without too much more from me, I'm going to hand it over to Bob and he will get us going.
All right. Thank you, Morgan, very much. All right. We're good?
Yep, we're all good. Thank you.
All right. Well, sorry about that. Now, for some reason, I can't see the chat. Let's see here. Well, I'm just going to roll. Well, anyway, if I am able to see the chat drop down, I'll try to answer questions as we go, but I'm not seeing it. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
I'll work on that portion, Bob. If you want to get started, I'll try to get your app fixed.
Yeah, I don't want to frustrate you guys listening in. Okay. Well, yeah, let's get started. So I saw a lot of folks out there saying new to foraging, and this picture you're seeing was a very delightful forage in the forest. This is actually in Wilderness Park. Oh, I don't know. It's probably, let's say, about 10 years ago. Really good day. We have puffballs here, giant puffballs. This is coral mushroom. I'll talk about oyster mushrooms. This is the elm oyster mushroom, a few wood ear mushrooms. So, wow, it was a fantastic day foraging in the woods. And first, before I get started, a shameless plug for a radio show. Hopefully you know about it. If you don't, it's called How's It Growing? And it's every Wednesday, 11 till noon on KZUM Lincoln, which is a local radio station. If you're outside of the listening area, you can tune in online too at kzum.org. Love to have you be a part of the program. Tomorrow I have Heather Byers from Great Plains Nursery on. We're going to be talking about tree planting, yay, and all things trees. So tune in tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Love to have you there. Okay, so first of all, before we get started, it's this whole foraging thing, it's just fun to do, first of all. And kind of what started it for me was, a lot of people have foraged for morel mushrooms, and we all know morels are great, but unless you know a friend of a friend of a friend, it's kind of hard to figure out where to go, right? And more often than not, I came up short and didn't get any collected. And so I was bound and determined to learn more mushrooms. And then another one as a kid we harvested called the box elder mushroom. I grew up in northeast Nebraska in a little town called Dodge, and we hunted these box elder mushrooms every fall. It kind of became a rite of passage for us. So that's kind of where my love affair for eating mushrooms as a kid, and love them or hate them. We'll talk about, obviously, if you're tuning in, you probably love mushrooms, love to consume them. But man, they're really important, as far as the ecosystem goes, right? Most of the soil mixed with dirt, it is, mushroom, fungi, mycelium, and it breaks up plant fiber. Basically, the trees that are down, if it wasn't for mushrooms, they wouldn't be decomposing like they do. And so the lack of mycelium in the soil is what causes desertification. And that's basically, dry desert-like soils because they lack the mycelium in those because of the lack of rainfall. So nothing lives without the support of mushrooms. It is the earth, and in many respects, the forebear of mankind, period. Mushrooms are just very important to our ecosystem. So using fungi to remove and neutralize environmental pollutants is a technique called mycoremediation that's going on right now. Mushroom mycelium is being used to create insulation, foam-like packaging, home building materials, and others. You can go online and look up mushrooms mycelium being used for making leather-like material, like for seat covers for cars or even jackets I've seen made out of mushrooms. Go figure, right? Mushrooms have a plethora of antiviral, antibacterial agents, and there's been a lot of research done on different types of mushrooms. We'll talk about those at the end. And for fighting cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, cold and flu symptoms, smallpox, just lots of different things. And back in the day, Katie Ayers here with Ash Gordon from Nebraska Mushroom. Nebraska Mushroom is no longer around, unfortunately. They are out of Grand Island. And she actually made a boat. This is all mushroom mycelium. Now the mycelium is growing through sawdust. That's how and then they just make a mold. And then that mycelium inhabits all of that sawdust. And they actually floated this on the water. I think you can find a YouTube video on it out there if you just Google mushroom, Nebraska mushroom boat. You can see Katie on the Platte River with it. Now, of course, you're not going to want to make a boat out of mushrooms, but basically she was just trying to prove a point that you could basically make any type of mold and make it into mushrooms. So even packaging containers are made out of it, and then the building blocks. Research is going on, and there's the leather-like material that you see made from mushroom mycelium. And it's mainly made from the bracket fungus. And the bracket fungus you've probably seen in the woods. That's that one that's really hard, kind of cemented at the side of a tree. And if you've ever gone and touched it or whatever, it's really hard and almost woody. Those are the bracket fungus. And those are the mycelium that they're using to make those products. So, but mushrooms are basically a macrofungi. So we have the mycelium underground, and then the mushroom itself is the fruiting spore. So you might say, can I over harvest the mushroom? No, because the mycelium is down below ground. You're just seeing the fruiting body of that. Now, certainly we can help expand the mushrooms by letting them spore out, but a lot of times they've spored out even before you're harvesting them. So you don't have to worry about over harvest. You can't hurt the ecosystem by doing that. And indeed, if you use mesh bags, a lot of people collect mushrooms in mesh bags. So as they're walking through the woods, they will actually spore out as you're, walking along with your bag. The spores are, obviously microscopic, and so they can go through that bag really easily. And oftentimes you'll find edible mushrooms along pathways, more so out in the deep part of the woods because of that fact that people are harvesting mushrooms and then walking along the trail, and that's where the spores are being released. So yeah, you can see the different parts there of the mushroom. Just wanted to kind of give a quick overview of that, but a lot of the life is below ground, creating that fungal mat, if you will. So the spores act like seeds. They're dispersed by a sporocarp, and if the spore lands on a suitable spot, it will produce mycelia, and then eventually it may form a new sporocarp or a new mushroom. In a typical mushroom, the spores are produced on the surface of the gills on the underside of the cap. So what a lot of mushroom people, they say, what type of spore print does it have? And that's the absolute identifier for a lot of species. Now, I've never used the spore print, only once, to identify the mushroom, and I'll show you that one as we get along. But it's actually kind of cool if you harvest a mushroom and then put that mushroom gill side down on a piece of paper, the spores will drop and leave a print like this. And you can actually Google mushroom spore print art because people are out there making artistic things out of these. So you're basically seeing the stain of the spores on white paper. So that's pretty cool. So in nature, they frequently make their own spore prints, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If you ever noticed the colored dust covering a leaf or the ground beneath the mushroom's gills, you have witnessed this phenomenon. And you may have thought, what is that weird stuff covering the top of the mushroom? And just know that is the spores from the mushroom above it. Because often mushrooms, certainly the edible ones like the oyster mushrooms, are in tight clusters. So they overlap like this. And so here, that white film that you see on top of this mushroom here, these are particular ones are called honey mushrooms. So you're seeing the spore print from the mushroom above it, this guy, raining down. So that, to me, showing me that spore print was the identifier for me, because there's only one mushroom this could possibly be mistaken for. And I had never harvested this one. A friend showed me it. And even though I knew he was an expert, Luke, if you're listening, I still had to look up and, get the key identifiers. And the one that was deemed poisonous had a brown, almost black spore print. So I knew, okay, without a doubt, that's a fact, Jack. That is a honey mushroom. And we'll talk about the honey as we move forward. Mushrooms are low in calories. They're high in fiber. They contain many important vitamins and minerals. Basically, they're really good for us. So eat more mushrooms. They help strengthen your immune system as well. So, and wild mushrooms are awesome. The thing you have to remember, really the only thing you have to remember with wild mushrooms is you have to cook them first. You're not just going to harvest a wild mushroom in the wild and just eat it fresh like you would a button mushroom. These, again, are loaded with different nutrients, and you can look those up online and learn more about just the benefits mushrooms have. And one of their benefits is vitamin D, and we all need more vitamin D in our life. And mushrooms are the only fruit or vegetable source of this critical so-called sunshine vitamin, right? We all know the more sunshine you get, the more vitamin D we get. And you may or may not know this, but a lot of us humans are kind of lacking vitamin D because we're stuck in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. Then we get out of work, we get in our car, we go home, we're in the house. We're not really exposed to sunlight, say, like we used to be back in the day. So the more you can get out and expose yourself to sunlight. Oh, and then what do? We cover ourselves with, SPF 50. So the sunlight that is a benefit to us can't even penetrate. So, man, absorb that sun. But if you can't, hey, mushrooms to your defense. And I actually heard from Ash from Nebraska Mushroom that if you are going to dry your mushrooms, or at least when you get home from harvesting, let them sit out in the sun for a while and they'll actually absorb more vitamin D. So that's kind of a cool thing to do. Okay, so for you newbies saying, okay, man, I got a lot to learn, and the thing that you got to remember is it's a finite number. The number of wild edible mushrooms out there. Oh, there's somewhere around 10 different species that we go after every year. And I say we as my friends and my wife and whoever's foraging, around 10 to 12 different species. And 3 or 4 of them are kind of like your go-to. So really all you have to do is learn those 3 or 4. It's kind of like telling you have to learn what a daylily looks like, or you have to learn what an iris looks like. They're that distinct. So it's like not like one mushroom is deceiving, kind of looking like this other one, right? They're their own separate species. So that should give you confidence in itself that you don't have to memorize 100 different mushrooms, right? So every year, a very small number of people die from eating wild mushrooms. Before embarking on a mushroom foray, precautions must be taken, of course. So I can't overemphasize enough the importance of adhering to expertise. You got field guides, professional mycologists, and what's cool now, back in the day, you had to have a field guide, but now you have things like iNaturalist, where you could take a picture of it, or better yet, you could join a group called Nebraska Mycological Society. So you can follow them on Facebook. So say you come across a mushroom, you're out foraging and you're not sure exactly, you're kind of confident, but you're not really sure. you can use that site and say, hey, do I have gray oyster mushrooms here, right? Or do I have, is this chicken of the woods? And then those folks can then answer your question and you can be really confident. It's like having an expert guide tagging along with you. So use those friends that know their mushrooms, and it'll help give you that confidence when you're out there on your own to identify the ones you're after. The one, that small number of people that get poisoned every year throughout the United States and the world, really, this one's kind of the main culprit. People see this one coming up in their yard, and it smells good. I mean, it smells like an edible mushroom. It looks good. It looks like something we can eat. That's called the green spored parasol. Kind of a funny name. And this one, if you did a spore print of it, it's actually green. And I've seen those in lawns before, and wondered what I was looking at, because there is an edible mushroom that grows in lawns. Most mushrooms grow on trees that we're after, the edible ones, not out of the grass or the lawn, like say a morel mushroom. But this green parasol, I mean, turning it upside down, you can see it already looks green on the older gills here. But if I laid this out on a piece of paper, the spore print would be a greenish gray, and very obvious. Leave it be. Do not eat it. That's the one that's poison. And the other one I think that can get people into trouble is this guy, the deadly gallerina. I maybe have seen it in Nebraska. It tends to grow. It can be semi-clustered like this, but it tends to grow as individuals more than not. And compared to my thumbnail, it's just a very small mushroom. So for me as a forager, I wouldn't want to forage something like this anyway. Well, one, it's deadly, right? But two, it's just so tiny, why mess with it? So it's easy to pass by. But again, as you come across a mushroom in the wild and you don't know what it is, just know the majority of them, it's like, for me, when somebody asks me, what is that, Bob? I'll say, I don't know. All I know is it's not edible. So just, if you want to forage, learn the edible ones. And I don't want to say disregard the rest, if you're into learning what they are, but just know, memorizing the edible ones is an easy process, and disregard the rest, right? Well, what if you're one of those people who says, I don't like mushrooms? Okay, so many of us have enjoyed delicious golden brown sauteed mushrooms that have that caramelization on them, right, that you get in the restaurant. But often when we saute mushrooms at home, and I've seen people be guilty of this, we end up with a soggy mess, right? We don't get that caramelization. What's wrong? A lot of times what you're doing is maybe crowding the skillet too much, where you have not a single layer of mushrooms, but more of them, stacked on top of each other. There's a lot of water in mushrooms. 95% of a mushroom is water. And so you have to remove that water first. But oftentimes we don't do that. People's first introduction to mushrooms is having a deep fat fried mushroom. It's like eating liquid mushroom inside of there. So, all right. So all wild mushrooms cannot be consumed raw. So just remember that you got to cook them. Many creative ways to incorporate them. Yeah.
I do have two questions, if I can pause really quickly. One of our questions is, where or which towns are these grown in? Maybe a broad answer for that.
Of where these are growing?
Where or which towns are the mushrooms? Like where?
Sure.
I think location wise, yeah.
Yeah. We'll certainly talk about that as we go along. As I'm getting into the species, just know that last year, folks, I had more urban. Did you have another question to read off too, Morgan?
Yes, and then we just had another one that says they used to say any mushroom growing on wood is safe, but that's not true, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can't adhere to that. It's a good rule of thumb where it's worth looking into to find out if it is edible. But yeah, do not use that as your final answer. That's for sure. But like I say, using those sites, you guys, there's so many people out there that know them now that if you ask people for help, even on Facebook, you might put it on your Facebook post. Hey, what is this mushroom I'm looking at? Or maybe a friend that hunts them. Yeah, it's easy to find out nowadays. But as far as where to go, I scored more mushrooms foraging last year in the city of Lincoln than I did out in the wild, mainly because I didn't have time to go hiking as much. but I'm always keeping my eyes peeled. Heck, I found 30 pounds of oyster mushrooms in cemetery last year, growing on a trunk of a tree. So happiness to me is when somebody cuts down a tree and they leave the stump, because oftentimes, there'll be a mushroom on it. But basically any woodlot that has down trees. Happiness for me is like when I go to Wilderness Park, I want to see more dead Siberian elms. First of all, it's an invasive species, so let them die away. And some people might hike Wilderness Park and go, geez, there's so many down trees. No, as a mushroom hunter, man, that's what we want because they're feeding on those dead trees. And oftentimes, looking for a mushroom, I'm looking for a tree that still has bark on it, and it's dead, but it still has bark. And maybe it's down on the ground and it still has bark because oftentimes that tree isn't that old. There'll be different cycles of different mushrooms breaking that tree down, and often the edible ones are feeding off that cambium layer that's still kind of there with the tree. So I look for the standing trees with bark or half bark, and then you just kind of look for the white. A lot of the mushrooms are white, and so easy to spot. But we'll go through those so you can see what they look like. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get you turned on to cooking more with mushrooms. I mean, there's pretty much a day that doesn't go by where my wife and I don't eat mushrooms, so which is kind of crazy to say. Lots of different ways to use them, and this is kind of my wish list or my go-to list. And Morgan, I imagine you're going to have this on YouTube. And this kind of brings up a point too for you wannabe foragers. We did a 3-part series teaming up with Conservation Nebraska. You can find it on YouTube if you just type in Nebraska wild edible plants. You can see a 3-part series. There's so many plants to talk about. It took 3 parts. So if you didn't catch that and you're interested in more things besides just mushrooms, I encourage you to do that because we're foragers by nature. And I think if we need an excuse to get out in nature, for me, it's collecting something. It always has been. And so this is kind of my go-to list of, what have I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I lied. 15 different edible mushrooms in Nebraska that at least I know of. There might be more, whatever. But I think 15 is a pretty good group. So if you want to save that, but again, it'd probably be up on YouTube for you to be able to download later, or if you just want to take a picture of the screenshot to say, these are the ones to look for. And not all of these will I find in any given year. It's just kind of the goal, But we got to talk about this baby first, right? The true morel mushroom. And it's actually not a true mushroom. It's an edible sac fungus. So that comes out of the ground, right? It's not obviously on trees, but it's not a true, cap with a stem mushroom. But, very distinctive looking, right? We have several species native to Nebraska. And of course, people will say, well, how do you know? There's all sorts of triggers people look for. They'll say when the lilacs are in bloom, or some will say when the forsythia are in bloom. Maybe you have a go-to you can talk about in the chat. But I have a friends that actually will bring soil thermometers with them. And when they're out hiking in the woods looking for morels, they'll kind of probe the soil to see what the temperature's at, knowing that, okay, maybe next week is the week. And it depends, of course, if you get a rain in between to have a good harvest. But my friend Luke tells me 53 degrees is the ideal temp. Well, guys, right now, if you go to the Nebraska Extension Office site that will give you the soil temperature, mainly for us gardeners, I think Lincoln's right around 55 degrees right now. So we should be out hunting morels. Let's just all get away from this webinar and I'll go foraging together. No, but seriously, now's the time if you're going to find morels. In the next couple of weeks, I'd be out searching. This is a haul we got from a friend that called me. He really doesn't like mushrooms, and he lives right on the edge of Lincoln, believe it or not. And we were able to score this many morels right in his property. I thought that was pretty cool. But morels are great. They're deliciously when they're browned, really meaty and full of flavor. So what you do is you prepare sliced mushrooms in a dry skillet. Don't add any oil, don't add anything, and put it on medium low. And then just be patient. Work on something else for dinner, prep wise, and just let your mushrooms in that skillet. We used a cast iron, nice heavy skillet like that, and leave it on. I call it low and slow. and let that mushroom sit there, especially morels, to cook them right, because there's a lot of water in them. But all mushrooms fit this bill. Low and slow, and then every once in a while you're stirring them, kind of, maybe you can use your spatula to kind of squeeze them down and find out if there's any water still in there, because oftentimes it will show you, because the water will literally come out of the mushroom. So leave them on until that water's almost all gone, and it's almost a dry mushroom now. And then you can crank up the heat more to medium high and add your butter, olive oil, whatever you want to turn your mushrooms then golden brown. Now, it's not going to take them long once you turn them up to medium high, so you don't really want to walk away. But I've done it just on medium, where I add kind of a mixture of butter and olive oil, and I'll just let them saute on one side, and then go in there and flip them, and they're nice and golden brown on one side, and then they're basically ready to rock and roll. I don't need them golden brown on both sides. So yeah, it's just good stuff. So yeah, heavy pan that it provides even heat, retains that heat, and then that temperature drop when you start putting food in the pan too. So anyway, yeah, I already explained that, so I don't need to, but that'll give you that caramelization you're looking for, right? And then as the mushrooms are brown, then you can add some liquid to that if you want to kind of create a gravy, if you will, and maybe add some fresh minced garlic to that to really pizzazz up your mushrooms. And I usually add my salt and pepper to season my mushrooms when they start releasing their water, because there's a lot of moisture in the pan. Because if I add the salt when the mushroom is dry, it won't really cling to that mushroom like you want it to. So that's usually when I season them. So for me, if I'm harvesting a boatload of mushrooms, like say I harvested 30 pounds of oyster mushrooms, I want to preserve them. Certainly you can dry mushrooms, but my preferred method is to blanch them. So I'm getting water to a rolling boil, and I'm adding a good amount of salt to it, like I'd be cooking pasta. And then I add the mushrooms to that and maybe boil them in that water for 3 minutes. And then when I take them and drain them out, I'm letting them dry on newspaper, usually on newspaper, because I don't want to use that many paper towels. And I'll let it sit on that newspaper until the surface is no longer wet. And then I can store those in freezer bags, and I use quart bags, and then I flatten the quart bags so it's easy to stack in the freezer, and you can stack away. And usually I'll measure 2 cups in that quart bag, just so I know if I have a recipe that calls for a certain amount, I got it. Okie doke. So that's my shtick on proper mushroom preparation. I'm telling you, you start doing it, you'll be happy you did. Yeah, we got a question?
Yes, we have a few in the Q&A actually.
Okay.
So the first one was just asking if they should be washing these mushrooms before cooking.
Yeah, good question. And to address that one first, Morgan, and then you can ask the other two.
Yeah.
What I generally do most of the time, they're clean. And if it's an older mushroom, as I say, past its prime, you'll kind of know, because the bugs will start attacking it and stuff, and you're just like 3 days too late. But usually they're clean. And if they're not, what I've found is when I put them in that boiling water, any sort of little dirt particles that are embedded in those gills, man, they're going to come right out of there in that boiling water, sink to the bottom. I mean, they're just really clean after you blanch them like that. Now, if I'm eating them fresh that night, certainly, and they look dirty, but most of the time, like I say, they're lickety split clean. I don't wash them, but certainly, if they are, yeah, go ahead and wash them and let them drain, and before you slice them up and do that. But just know, when you wash them, they're going to absorb some of that water. So you want to do that low and slow to get that water out of the mushroom before you saute it and get that caramelization, if that makes sense. So you're not serving your guests or yourself a soggy mushroom. Go ahead, Morgan.
Okay. The next one's kind of got 2 parts to it. Are there any non-edible mushrooms that can be confused for morels? And do you pull the mushroom out of the ground or cut it?
Yeah, good question. You're not really going to hurt the mushroom by pulling it out of the ground. I think people think that, by cutting it, you're going to preserve the, whatever's down below. You're just taking the fruiting body. That mycelial mat is always there waiting for the right conditions if you're in those pristine woods. And that's often what it takes for good morels hunting grounds is pristine woods. What I mean by that is like oaks and oak hickory forest. We all know, people find them along the Platte too, which isn't necessarily an oak hickory, but those moist areas, right? But in general, I cut them though, or I just use my thumb and kind of snap them off at ground level, because I found if I pull them and put them in my bag, guess what's going to happen? All that dirt or sand that's on the bottom of that stem is now going to get embedded in all those little grooves. And nothing's more annoying to me than eating a morel and biting into a grain of sand. Ouch. It's not fun. So yeah, snip them off at the base.
Perfect. And then the next one, and this is the last one for right now. Can I find morels in some random patch of woods? Example, primarily composed of cottonwoods.
Yeah, you sure can. And I think what my thing with mushroom hunting is, when's a good time to go, right? And it's kind of like, when's a good time to plant a tree? Yesterday. And so what I found is you're not going to find them unless you look. Oh, right. Big surprise there. Because I found, I went through a stretch where we were going, me and my friends, once a week, and, down to Wilderness Park. And if you go once a week, the odds are with you, right? And versus, oh, I went 3 times this year. I didn't find anything. So yes, you can find them in even an average woodlot. Now a woodlot surrounded by corn and soybeans, sure. Even in the Salt Valley Lake areas, people will find them. I think anywhere there's a good amount of woods and moisture nearby, for sure, they'll surprise us. And so keep looking, and again, use that soil temperature thing as your guide. Or you can even join, there's morel mushroom groups. I think there's Morel Mushroom Hunters of Nebraska or something like that. Even there's national uh, Facebook group I belong to. And nothing will make you more jealous than seeing somebody posting a whole back of a pickup full of mushrooms, 115 pounds in an hour and 15 minutes. Like 115 pounds, give me a break. But these are serious hunters. And those are hunters actually hunting these morels to make a buck, because you've probably seen them available maybe at a farmer's market or whatnot, 40, 45 bucks a pound. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay that, but that's just me. I'm going to find them. And if I don't find them, I'm going to let the people with more money than me purchase those. And then as far as a poisonous look-alike of the morel, there's one up in Canada called the false morel that I've eaten before. And I don't know. I don't know of one in Nebraska. Let's put it that way. But the false morel, I mean, when I went on this trip with somebody that knew better, we ate them, and I'm still here. But then I find out later the false morel is poisonous. I'm like, what? So I know enough just to be dangerous. All I know is that there's nothing to confuse the morel with. That timing of year, that look that you see, nothing to confuse it with. But again, use your friends, use those sites if you question yourself. Okay, so if we're caught up, now I'm just going to go through that list that I showed you. And wood ear mushrooms are a really fun mushroom to collect. Now you can see where it gets its name from. Kind of looks like an ear, right? And maybe everybody's kind of seen these on the sides of trees, and oftentimes you'll see them on dead trees with bark, or even dead trees with no bark. But usually on standing trees, but I've also seen them on trees on the ground as well. And usually these wood ear mushrooms will come out after, say, several days of consecutive rain. And the best time to hunt for wood ears, because they're out fruiting with their cool looking, funky looking mushroom. And then 2 days later, they're past their prime. So you got to be on top of collecting them. And you've probably eaten a wood ear mushroom. If you've had hot and sour soup at any good Oriental restaurant, you've had wood ear mushrooms in the hot sour soup. They call it black fungus, and maybe you've seen it in Oriental stores as well. So it's the same animal. There's different subspecies of it, but this species is what we call cosmopolitan, meaning it grows on every continent pretty much except for Antarctica, and it's all over the world. But get this, they're doing research on it, mostly in China, is where you're seeing the research done on the medicinal benefits of mushrooms. And they're looking at this as an anti-tumor, hypoglycemic, anticoagulant, cholesterol lowering properties. So it's just a good mushroom for us as well. And maybe you've seen this out hiking in the woods. To me, like touching them and feeling them, and they're funky looking. I mean, look at that thing and go, are you sure that's edible? Because it looks so funky. But when you touch it, it feels like velvet. They're just really soft. And these pictures that I took, I mean, they are in prime condition right there. Oh, I don't have my hand there for scale, but you're looking at about maybe a 3-inch wide mushroom grown on the side of an elm. And they often grow in big groupings, and you can score a whole bunch on a good day. And I'll get as many as I can. And why is that? Because, well, I'm there. They're available. They'll be gone in 2 days. And I can preserve them. So I may not find Whittier mushrooms for another 3 months, or maybe that's the only harvest I get all year. So I'm going to score as many as I can. And what I do is I dry them in my food dehydrator. Now you can just dry them in the sun for a while and then finish them in the food dehydrator because, again, I'm wanting them to absorb vitamin D. So, so that's a really cool thing. And once you put them in the food dehydrator or the lowest setting in your oven, they are crispy dry like a potato chip. And then you can just put them in freezer bags. And I remember, now I say up to a year, that or more is very true. I've had these mushrooms in freezer bags for more than a year, and they're just fine to rehydrate. Because what you do then when you're ready to cook with them is you just rehydrate them. And all you do is get them in a bowl, maybe a handful in a bowl, put some warm water in there. And I tell you what, like the water is, say, tepid hot. And that mushroom will rehydrate. I'm not kidding you, in 5 or 10 minutes. It will go from it'll go from this dried state to looking like this again. It's just a trip how it works. Mushroom just completely absorbs that water again. And again, a variety of dishes you can use them in. Probably the classic is there's black fungus in a good Oriental soup. I like using them in stir fry or lo mein type of dish with black fungus. Oh, and another thing I've done, that picture you've seen, I'm sorry, I'll back up here not to make you dizzy. But these shreds you see right here, I did them low and slow for a long time. I just julienned the mushroom after I rehydrated them. And this is an oyster mushroom, if you're wondering why that's in there. But anyway, I julienned them and then put them in the skillet low and slow until they were dry. And then I added some olive oil until they got crispy. And they were really good just as a topping on a salad. I mean, it was like a nice textural contrast. What do they taste like? I mean, I don't know. They're not very strong. It just adds a little je ne sais quoi to your dish. And I know a lady that makes egg rolls. If you ever go down to the Sunday Farmers Market, Mary Lou makes these egg rolls. And it's primarily the the thread rice noodles combined with the julienned Whittier mushroom. And then that's the filler. And she adds cabbage to that as well. They're the bomb. So you can add them to egg rolls as well. So this is one that's kind of well, not kind of, it is a funky mushroom. And I tell you, it took some bravery from me. I knew it was edible. This one often grows at the base of a dead tree. Here you can see my little dog, perfect timing when I was taking a picture of the mushroom. All of a sudden she comes around the base of the tree and takes a little sniff of it. Now the dead man fingers with my dog in the picture are past their prime. So I didn't even bother to harvest them because they were really hard and just, done. But the ones on the left, those are fresh and ready to roll. And if you touch them and feel them, they're soft to the touch and they're kind of pliable and bendable. But yeah, they can be in big clusters. And they call them dead man's fingers, well, because they kind of look like fingers, right? Anyway, cooking with them, I took them home and sliced into them and then gave it a little bite because they said you can eat them raw. But I did go ahead and gave them a saute and added them to pasta. And It's kind of like our version of, oh, what's the one the pigs hunt in Europe? The famous mushroom that we shave and it costs so much. I can't think of its name right now. It's escaping my brain. Okay, anyway, dead man's fingers. It's probably the most unusual wild edible mushroom. I don't want you to necessarily focus on this one. It's just one to add to your list if you bump into it out in the wild and learn more about it. This picture we took, in my opinion, is the most beautiful mushroom you could find. At the time when we found it, we had no idea it was edible. We just thought, man, not that it looks edible, but it sure smelled good. And okay, I'm going to learn about this baby. And I learned it's called the comb tooth mushroom. They also called it bear's tooth. It's got several names out there. And you notice I put the scientific names in there for you folks too. But can't really mistake this for anything out there. No other mushroom looks like this. And it's pretty rare to find this in the wild. So if you do, consider yourself lucky. And if you're with a friend, you got to high five each other because, first of all, it's beautiful. Second of all, it's just a really tasty mushroom as well. A lot of water in it, so it really cooks down big time. And you can actually take a little, that's probably a palm-sized cluster you're seeing right there. And then you can cook them down really easily and slice them, much like you would do a lion's mane, if you're familiar with that. It's in the same class as a lion's mane. And all those mushrooms in that lion's mane category that kind of look like this are edible. There's no poisonous lookalikes. It almost looks like coral mushroom is another name for it. It looks like something that belongs in the bottom of the ocean, in my opinion. What a cool mushroom. So again, if you've ever seen it, consider yourself lucky. And this log, by the way, was on the ground and didn't see the mushroom, but I know better as a mushroom hunter. Don't just look on one side of the log, look on the other side because you might just bypass one that you've seen before. There you kind of see the size of the mushroom compared to the palm of my hand. And then if you're really, really lucky, I've never found this one in the wild. You got a question?
I was just gonna say we had a few people say truffles for the one we couldn't think
What
of.
I was trying to think of. Yes. So you would think of that dead man's finger as shaving, like you would a truffle on your final dish. And like oftentimes when, Europeans or Italians are shaving the truffles, it's, when the pasta's finished, right? Just kind of letting that mushroom kind of cook with the warm pasta to finish things up. Yeah, so the bear's head, I mean, okay, I said the coral mushroom is the prettiest. Okay, fine, I lied. The bear's head is probably the prettiest. This one, only seen once in the wild, and we harvested it. It's a tasty mushroom too. There's people that's trying to grow this one commercially for obvious reasons. It's just really cool looking. And the lion's mane, you've been seeing a lot more showing up on social media channels. Commercial growers are growing that. They've got a lot of medicinal value to them as well. But again, all 4 species found in North America are edible and are among the safest and most unmistakable mushrooms out there. I mean, you're not going to mistake that for anything else, right? It almost looks like icicles. Really cool mushroom. But again, this tree was on the ground. And why do I point that out? Because if a tree's on the ground, you see, if it's up in the air and it's been really dry, there's not a lot of moisture. But say that 1-inch rain we had last week, because it's been so dry, if I'm out hunting for mushrooms like the oyster mushrooms we'll be talking about, it's worth looking for the oyster mushrooms, and we'll be getting to those here shortly. And then we're getting chances of rain this week, which will probably bring out the wood ear mushrooms as well. So those two things, these bear's heads and the coral mushroom, those are more late spring into summer mushrooms. This is a lot of people's favorite, and it's one of my favorites as well. Just a super cool, beautiful mushroom. There's no other mushroom that looks like this, and your first thing when you see it out in the wild is like, there's no way that thing could be edible. It's too pretty, and it just kind of says, hello, I'm beautiful, but I'm poisonous. But no, it's very far from being poisonous. In fact, it's 5-star food. The thing is, if you come across a chicken of the woods and if you start reading more about it, man, there's so many chicken of the woods I came across that are past their prime. I was 3 days too late. And you see these, we call these fans. And you basically, when you harvest this thing, I mean, it weighs, this mushroom cluster you're looking at here is probably the size of a football or so. Let's say a volleyball. And each one of these layers, then I'm peeling that off. And then there's two different things. You can keep it whole like this, or you can peel it, slice it apart, and then blanch it. But if I'm keeping them whole like this, my intent is to use that and make it into a hamburger. And we'll get to that. Meaning I don't want little shreds, but I can also shred it. And you'll see where it gets its name if you peel it apart. The texture of the mushroom looks like chicken meat, hence the name. It doesn't taste like chicken, okay? It just kind of looks like chicken, but it is a prize for a lot of people. It's one of those mushrooms where if you're hunting with friends and say you're a newbie or whatever, and you find it in the wild, everybody's got their camera out like the paparazzi taking pictures of it. These two I harvested walking my dog and I was keeping my eye on it growing out of a stump, this stump that wasn't ground out. So it was about a foot above the grass. And here it had a crack in the stump. And here was this chicken of the woods growing out of that crack. And I just would walk by it every day and said, okay, today's the day. So it was a nice score with urban foraging. Okay, so once summer mushrooms start coming out, which is let's say June, we're getting hopefully some good moisture. Man, you should be out looking for chicken of the woods. I've found them in the fall as well. It's just one of those where they stick out like a sore thumb because they're so bright, that orangish yellow color that you see. Yeah, so there again, you will come across flushes that are past their prime again and again. Harvest the youngest chicken of the woods you can find. They grow pretty fast and they get tough and leathery or riddled with little bugs. So what you're seeing here, you see how they're thick on the edges? To me, that is a chicken of the woods that if I'm coming back, I'll check on it tomorrow, because what happens is they'll fan out. And once they fan out, they can get a little more dry and kind of, they're not as tasty. They're just blandola. Whoops, wrong way. So there again, thick on the ends. It hasn't fanned out completely. And again, one of the safest widely available mushrooms out there. There are parasites decomposing or infecting living trees, eating them from the inside out. So these mushrooms you'll often find on half dead trees. So when I'm looking for chicken of the woods out in the woods, I'm looking for maybe a half dead oak where you can see there's a big branch. If you're looking up in the canopy of the tree and it's off in the distance and half the tree is dead, I'm probably going to leave the trail and go look on both sides of that tree to make sure I'm not missing a chicken of the woods. Because although they stand out, it could be on the back side of the tree and you completely miss it. So love to take my boys out hunting for mushrooms. And this is my son, Aaron, all proud holding his score because he spotted the mushroom and was all proud of that. But here you see where the edges are more thin. It is so-called fanned out. But bending it, and so I'm testing it there and seeing, is it past its prime or good to go? And thankfully, it was still soft and subtle enough. It wasn't like, because they'll get kind of dry and cardboard-like when they're no good. And I just don't want you to harvest that and then get home and cook with it and decide this is no good. You just harvested it at the wrong time. There's another one of my boys with the score of a lifetime. That's definitely the biggest grouping of chicken of the woods we've ever found. And when he saw that, we sent him to the tree, because what we do is we'll leave the trail and you can see his hands against the dead part of that oak, and the mushroom is on the living part of the oak, again, sucking it dry from the inside out. So it's basically a tree that's going down and the mushroom is just helping it along. You can see it's almost past its prime, but it was still good enough to harvest and in good shape. And we split it in threes. Everybody took a 3 clusters home, and man, that's a lot of mushroom right there, folks. Probably 30 pounds. So to freeze these, you can also saute them. Oftentimes I'll blanch them, but I have a friend who sautés them in butter first before he freezes them. And you can add some herbs like thyme, a little salt to taste, but you don't need to brown the mushrooms. You're just kind of cooking them to get rid of the enzymes, so then you can freeze them and then pull them out of the freezer and they're as good as new. You just want to kind of remove the water is what you're doing, right? So when putting them in the freezer, make sure to add plenty of butter or fat to the mushrooms since it will help ward off any freezer burn. And they'll last for a year or more in there. For me, I'll also, this is that shredding I was talking about. So these I'm actually pulling apart with my hands. I didn't even use a knife. And it looks just like chicken, doesn't it? And that was blanched for 3 minutes. And now they're draining on the newspaper before I baggy them up. So that I would cook in a saute pan. And they would end up looking more like this on the left, where I'm getting kind of those caramelized burnt edges, if you will. And it's a mushroom that I take my sweet time cooking, low and slow to get the water out. Then I add my oil because they're a thick mushroom and they'll absorb that oil. And I want to get the water out before that happens. And you'll get some good caramelization taking place on that. People will use them in stir fries a lot. And the mushroom meat actually kind of looks like, well, shrimp, right? But cooking them on the grill, now these are blackened, and you might say, ooh, you burned them, dude. But actually, they're really hard to burn. And the char you see on there, it's kind of like if you have ribs, right? The ribs are charred. It's no different than that. So these are the big pieces I was showing you earlier that I'm blanching and freezing like that, pulling them out of the freezer, and then getting the water out by putting them in the skillet. And because I like to marinate these too. So I'll get the water out and then I'll put them in a marinade for maybe a half hour. And that marinade might be, let's say soy sauce or a little tamari with rice wine vinegar, a little sesame oil. Let that marinate in that juice and then put them on the grill and make a burger out of them. Oh my world. We thought it was one of the best burgers we ever had. And yeah, so really cool mushroom, pretty mushroom, one of my faves. Okay, so now this is a good fall mushroom. I'm not a big fan. I'm just showing you because you could mistake it for another one. It's edible, but they call it black staining polypore, meaning if you're questioning if it's this or hen of the woods, because there's chicken of the woods, that's this guy, but there's another one I'm going to show you soon called hen of the woods or maitake. So this black staining polypore is just that it'll have black stains, and you know, because I've only cooked it once, and the water that I was cooking it in, boiling it to blanch it, turned black. And I'm sorry, I just couldn't get past that. I'm like, I'm not going to trust you. This is one I have never eaten, but if you look it up online, they claim it's edible. You just got to get its young. I'm just showing you so you can learn there is a mushroom, and it often grows at the base of oak trees. Again, half dead oaks, dying hardwoods in October, like an October, November type of mushroom. So it's a fall mushroom. The one I want you to know about more particularly is the hen of the woods, also known as maitake. And this is a 5-star mushroom, my absolute favorite. And you score a maitake, you're a happy camper. And it's a layered mushroom, as you can see, much like the chicken of the woods was. But the texture of this mushroom is very much like chicken of the woods, meaning it's very meaty and looks a lot like chicken. There's one I found. You can see my hand there for scale. It's not very big. I decided to take it that day because I wasn't going to make it back, and I didn't know if it was going to grow anymore. But what a beautiful little mushroom! Isn't that thing something? And it's got some weight to it too. I mean, even though it was, maybe twice the size of my hand, the thing was like weighed as much as a football. Pretty crazy. But you peel them off in layers. The underside is white like that. And that's the difference between the black staining polypore and this one. The black staining polypore has white spores. This one or black spores, I'm sorry. This one are white. So it's easy to tell the two apart. But as you're peeling off all those layers you see, you're getting a whole lot of mushroom on that little guy like that. So I'm just peeling them apart. I mean, that end that you see there, that brown tip, I'm cutting that away, to clean them, if you will. And then I'm sauteing them or fresh or blanching them and freezing them for later use. Here's the biggest one we've ever found. The guy that found it, I made him high five me. And he was like, "Why am I high-fiving you?" And I said, "Because you found the mother lode. You may not find a mushroom like that in your lifetime again." And I don't think he realized that. You see right here is an oak tree that was cut down. So this still has bark on it. So this mushroom is feeding on the root system that remains right here, right at the base of the oak, even though the oak was cut down. Here's another oak in the background there that's alive. But if this oak was half dead, you guarantee I'd be looking for a mushroom at the base of it. So this thing weighed a solid 30 pounds. It was a heavy mushroom. And we were told from a guy that it was probably worth $1,500. So when my friend posted it online, because this is a 5-star mushroom available in gourmet restaurants, people hunt this mushroom and sell them to restaurants down south and out east. I've seen images online of this thing that people will go out and collect them by the pickup full and make some serious cash with this mushroom. But there it is peeled. Looks just like chicken, doesn't it? Same texture like chicken of the woods. And there again, I'm putting it in the pan there and low and slow, getting the water out first. And then I'm adding my oil and butter to that. And then you get a nice brown caramelization. Good substitute for meat as a meaty texture in a vegetarian dish. They're just the bomb. That's all I can say. One of my faves. They go great in any sort of pasta dish. They're just a great, great mushroom for a lot of different uses. We put them on pizzas um, after we saute them and cook them up. Just a lot of different uses. Okay, one of our wild edible hikes. This young lad holding probably the funkiest, one of the funkiest mushrooms we'll look at tonight is the giant puffball. And because you look at it and you go, "There's no way that thing's edible." And there's really no poisonous look-alike. And I'll show you if you find one, the ID characteristic, meaning you cannot mistake it for anything else. But they can get big, as you can see. There we are harvesting one day, and we're finding them. That mushroom there is solid. It's like taut, if you will. It's not mushy. And then you can cut them up and into pieces and saute them. But we'll get to that. So these mushrooms are found in meadows. People, you maybe even seen them growing out of your lawn before and wondered if if it's edible. Um, Usually they're available in late summer to early fall. I'll start thinking about puffball season in August and September. And if we run into some good weather in September, say it's not hot and miserable, but it's like highs in the 70s and we get a couple good rains, man, it's puffball season. And despite their large size, you can get a big puffball that's perfectly edible. And there's probably the biggest one we've ever harvested. And I thought it was going to be so big it wasn't going to be good anymore. But cutting it in half, that's the distinguishing feature of a giant puffball. If there's any yellow inside here, it's got to be creamy white. It's either an imposter or it's past its prime. But the imposter, you could possibly mistake it for, only gets to be about 2 inches, the poisonous one. This guy, as you can see, gets much bigger than 2 inches. So it's really unmistakable. You can't really confuse it with anything else. So when they're past their prime, they get brown and discolored. Maybe you've seen one in the woods when it is old and you can kind of kick it around like a volleyball in the woods. So it's kind of like finding a volleyball out in the woods. One of the funnest things to come upon. And you can see they often have dimples. Let me show you. Yeah, dimples, they almost look like a moon. It's a full moon out in puffball season. And that's my wife, Pat, with the biggest one we've ever found. I mean, look at that giant. If you look, I've not seen a picture of it, but the world record was 59 inches across. I don't know if you'd find that in Nebraska. You need a place with a lot of moisture. But that's pretty impressive for a mushroom to get, almost 5 feet across. That's crazy. Yeah, that's what they look like when they're sporing out later on in late fall. Maybe you bumped into that in nature and it's like, wow, that's really cool. When you dust it with your hand, there's all the spores. And when I find one in nature, we're always kicking it around, getting those spores to get released and say, make more puffballs, please. It's a fun mushroom to cook with. You can slice them or dice them. And I have a friend, when he dices them, he blanches them in soup stock. I'll just blanch them in boiling water here, boiling salt water. Oh, maybe for, again, a couple, 3 minutes. And what looked like a marshmallow fluff, they reduced in size and became more dense. And then again, I put them on newspapers to drain them and let them surface dry. And then you can kind of think of them as, I'm going to prepare them like I would tofu. You can, break them out of the freezer, get rid of the water, you low and slow in the skillet, and then bread them and fry them like tofu, or then get some caramelization on them and use them in a stir fry. You can actually go online and find a recipe, a YouTube video of a dude that uses them as a pizza crust. He just took those big slices like that, a half-inch thick, and then painted olive oil on them, and then cooked them on a grill top, low and slow, until that one side turned golden brown. And then he flipped it and added his ingredients on that cooked side, and then cooked the other side low and slow, and turned it until it turned a nice golden brown, and fed it to his friends without telling them what they were eating. And they said, dude, what is this pizza crust? It's like the best ever. So go figure. That I haven't tried yet, but it's on my bucket list. But just Google recipes with any of these mushrooms, recipes using giant puffball, recipe using the hen of the woods, recipes with chicken of the woods. There's so many out there. So yeah, fun stuff with the giant puffball. They're excellent to cook and behave much better than many other mushrooms. What that means is, mainly because they don't release masses of liquid when you put them in the hot pan. They kind of retain their shape. So that what makes them perfect to grill or saute. And they again, kind of like a hamburger again, or a patty, if you want to make it like that, if you slice them into half-inch thick pieces. So, and they also take well to marinades as well. So yeah, there they are, just frying them up in a pan as you would use them in a sandwich or a burger type situation, or again, prepared like you would tofu. So many different ways. There's also this cute little one. Now, this one I have not eaten yet, mainly because I don't trust it. So it's one of those this is me, a forager that likes foraging for mushrooms, telling you I don't eat this one unless you come across somebody, a friend that's with you, that says, oh yeah, dude, they're really good, I eat them all the time. That person I'm going to trust. But for me, I'm just like, I'm not there yet. But one of these days I'll get the nerve, because it is an edible mushroom. But I'm just showing you this to show you that you can't confuse a puffball with this, because this one grows on a tree. The puffball grows out of the ground. These little puffballs you see are maybe an inch across, and they grow in clusters like that. So impossible to tell apart. But the edible ones, again, following that rule, because there is a look-alike of this guy that I'm scared of. But what I'm told is, this guy, when you cut into it, will be creamy white. The other one is yellow to brown. So that's the distinguisher. Again, I just haven't gotten enough nerve to do it yet, but it's on my bucket list. Okay, how are we doing on time? I don't have a clock with me, Megan or Morgan. If you would chime in. For some reason, I can't see the time on my computer here. Oh,
Yes,
there
it
it is.
is. It's 7:41, and we do have a question about the puffballs,
Okay, perfect.
which they're just asking, do puffballs puff spores?
Do they puff spores? Yeah, good
Yes.
question. Let me back up. So you see this image right here. You can actually Google images of puffballs getting pelted by a heavy rain. And so a raindrop hits this, and that's what it's designed to do, this pear-shaped puffball. It's going to release the spores when something touches it. So a rain just hitting this guy will release this cloud-like smoke, or those are just, let's say, millions of spores looking for a new place to rest. But the puffball we're cooking with, we're collecting it before it spores out, and that sporing out is that stage. And you're going to know if you come across this mushroom, I'm not going to eat that thing. No. you'll know right away. And plus, I always got to stick my nose and see what it smells like. It's not the most pleasant smell at this stage either. But anyway, literally trillions of spores as I'm dusting it there. But yeah, they do spore out just like anything else. Okay, now let's talk about one of my favorite mushrooms, the oyster mushrooms. It's known for its what we call decurrent stems. That means it lacks a stalk. So think of it, the classic mushroom that you see in all the pictures that has the gills and the cap and then a stalk connecting that. A lot of the oyster mushrooms grow in these clusters with overlapping clusters. That's one of the easiest distinguishers, almost a shelf-like formation, and then they lack a true stalk on them. So yeah, the best time of year for them is late summer into fall, but I've found them in the spring. I've found them in April. I've found them in May. I've found them in June. I've found them in July, pretty much every month, but it depends on the timing. What I mean by that is if it's 95, 100 degrees and hot in June and July and August, I'm probably not going to be in any mood to go out and find oysters. But if we get a week, a cool stretch with some good rain, maybe highs in the 70s. What they like is highs in the 70s, lows in the 40s. So that early fall, man, that's prime time in September. But I found them get this in November and December as well. If we run into a warm stretch in November, like a week of above normal temperatures, I found them. I remember harvesting oyster mushrooms when it was 11 degrees out. Now, granted, the mushrooms froze because it froze that night. But heck, they were frozen. I just took them home, let them thaw, and prepared away. But get this, there's no poisonous look-alike mushroom. So this is like, in my mind, the premier one you've got to learn because there's no mistaking it for any other poisonous look-alike. When you got an oyster, you've got an oyster. But again, just to confirm, always use your phone to ask a friend or ask Mycological Society or iNaturalist, anybody. We have several, at least a couple species anyway, of the oyster mushroom. One's called the phoenix tail, and it's often, this is my hand for scale, so it's a little guy, but boy, they sure are cute and very tasty. So it's the smaller of the oyster mushrooms, but still, you can see what I'm talking about with those decurrent stems. What that means is the gills also become part of the stem. You can see it's not a naked stalk. The gills become part of that stem, and it's growing in overlapping clusters too. That's two of the dead giveaways for I came across oysters. So they're just a good mushroom as far as all mushrooms are good for us, right? But the phoenix tail contains amino acids such as thiamine, riboflavin, folic acid, sterols, carotenoids. So they're just a good mushroom, and it's a good mild mushroom for cooking with. I mean, we use it in all sorts of different things. I mean, even layered in sandwiches, or my favorite is stir fry always. And but when I'm preparing it for stir fry, you guys, I'm doing the low and slow first. I'm cooking my mushrooms separate, and then I'm adding them back in the end. I'm getting it low and slow. I'm getting the water out. I'm adding my oil to get them caramelized. Then I'm taking them out of my skillet or my stir fry and then adding them back at the end, if that makes sense. That way they retain that nice texture. But the phoenix tail is sure a pretty little guy. Yeah, go ahead.
We have a question in the Q&A. It's just someone's asking, are there any local groups that go out hunting together that new foragers can join to help learn?
Yeah, good question. And I've had people ask me if I would lead some hikes, and my answer always is, yeah, I mean, we're going to hike, but the likelihood of us actually finding something is slim. I guess what's kept me from doing that is saying, well, we didn't find anything today, guys, but we made it out in nature. Well, what did you really get out of that other than nothing? But that being said, there is a Nebraska Mycological Society that I mentioned earlier, and they do go out and go hiking. They have at least several a year. But by joining them, you're going to learn the next time they're going out. And oftentimes when they're going out, they're looking at any mushroom, any fungus. Let's just botanize and go out there. But obviously they're going to tell you if it's edible or not too. But I would encourage you to hook up with that group, because that's the only one I'm aware of right now that goes out there and actually, a guided hike to look at mushrooms. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm not going to do it yet. Maybe someday. Okay, so we got a call from a friend. That's Pat again. My wife and I, we were out hunting mushrooms in a different location, and our friend Brian, who you saw in that picture before, gives us a call and says, "Hey, where are you guys at? What are you doing?" "Oh, we're out mushroom hunting." And they're like, "Oh, so are we." And so they told us where they were at, and they said, "We got so many oysters, we don't need this cluster." "Oh, okay." So they told us where they were at, and we came and scored this nice, beautiful cluster. So there you see the scale of the gray or the pearl oyster compared to the phoenix, much bigger, a lot of, overlapping layers. I mean, this baby is in prime condition right there. And there you can see how proud Pat is that we scored it. And there you see that half dead tree I was talking about. There's still bark on it. And notice the mushrooms are growing out of where this bark is starting to peel away. So I peeled away that bark to see what was behind it. And you can see here's the mycelial end of all those mushrooms. Now, I didn't eat this part, obviously. I cut away the fruiting body here and ate this part. But I just wanted to show you that this mushroom is able to feed on what little cambium layer is still available from that dead tree. As that tree is decomposing and losing its bark, once it loses all of its bark, it's pretty rare for an oyster to be on it. It happens, but it's pretty rare, because here you see another cluster on a dead tree that is fully barked, and it's actually coming out of what was a broken branch. So there again, that layering, that effect, and that decurrent stem where the gills are coming all the way down the stem, dead giveaway that you just scored a nice cluster of oyster mushrooms. And when I take them home, I slice them up, blanch them, and then let them dry on newspapers till they're surface dry, baggy them up. And I've got oyster mushrooms in the freezer right now that will last me until, well, the next mushroom season. Certainly, I cook them fresh too, just like this, low and slow to get the water out and before I add my oil. Yeah, there's another question.
I was just gonna say, if you're okay with it, I'm just gonna launch our survey while we're still going over a few things, so I don't have to
Sure.
interrupt you at the end and miss any questions.
Is that cool to do that? Or you? Yeah, I'm cool with it as long as you
Oh
are. You
yeah.
bet.
Yep, it won't kick you out. Just if everybody doesn't mind, fill out, but keep listening. And we're not ending yet. I just don't want to cut you off at 8 o'clock.
Right. And I'm racing to get through it. You know me, Morgan.
Okay, I know.
And,
There you go.
and as you guys could see, there's just a lot to talk about with mushrooms, right? Aren't there? They're just fascinating critters. I just think they're fascinating critters. And somebody brought me oyster mushrooms. I remember seeing these as a kid. I didn't know what the heck they were. And I remember my dad saying, "I don't know what it is, but we better not eat it," because he didn't know what it was. And all those mushrooms bypassing me all these years. And then a friend brought me some that he had cooked, and I was sold ever since, because man, they caramelize really beautiful. Here's a dish I made with oyster mushrooms with sunchokes growing at home, and brought it to a potluck and let people try it. But the one I grew up on is this one I mentioned at the start, the box elder mushroom. This one grows up on traditionally box elders, but it can also grow on elm trees, also called the elm oyster. And it can grow maybe with a couple, but it's not that multi-layered effect that you see with the gray oyster. This one has a true stalk, as you can see. It doesn't have that decurrent stem. But this one, really, you can't mistake it for any other mushroom. One, it's the time of year. It's really only out there in the fall, around frost time. So October is when I'm looking for this baby. Sometimes we don't get a hard freeze till November. October into November is when I'm looking for this mushroom. And it's just a very meaty mushroom. And when it's in its prime, it's easy to cook with. It has a very distinct smell to it that no other mushroom smells like. I can't describe it, but it's one I learned as a kid. When in doubt, I would smell it and go, definitely a box elder. But again, all these years later, there was never anything I harvested that could remotely look like it. So there I am plucking some off the tree. And you can imagine, as a kid, we all love climbing trees. And so you can imagine why we gravitated towards the box elder. It was just who can scale that tree first and who can find the most box elder mushrooms. There you see the nice look at the gills underneath. And again, they can grow in clusters, but not big clusters. And again, that stalk is the giveaway as well. But the gray oyster, just know that if you run across a big cluster like this, they're both edible. So it doesn't matter. And they saute up beautifully. You can get a great caramelization on them because they're so meaty. And growing up, my mom would prepare them like this, and we would often have them accompanying a good steak on the grill. And they are just the bomb. It's one of my favorite mushrooms. And this one I wanted to turn you on to. This is my wife, Pat. Last summer, we were camping at Ponca State Park, and I knew about this mushroom, the golden oyster. This mushroom is an imposter. It's not native here. In fact, what happened is it escaped cultivation. People are growing this in commercial sense, but the spores kind of getting out there in nature. And some people in the mycological group are calling it an invasive species, certainly out in the eastern United States. Well, now we're starting to find it in Nebraska. And we found this huge grouping on a tree at Ponca State Park. I'm walking my dog, it's around dusk, and I go, oh, well, you look at that. There was 30 pounds of mushrooms on this one dead tree. And so I come back with the dog and say, we're going to need a bag. And the friends that were with me weren't foragers, and they were just kind of blown away that, first of all, that I trusted eating these things. But get this, I sent some home with these people, and they actually got back to me and said they were really tasty. So the golden oyster, learn this mushroom, look it up online. I think it's probably out there in places like eastern Nebraska along the Missouri corridor. So you'd find it, say, at Ponca State Park, Schramm Park, Indian Cave State Park, all places like that. But I think it's going to continue to march east. And the best way we can combat an invasive species, in my opinion, is eat the heck out of it. So there you go. It's a good, tasty oyster mushroom. That's why it's being cultivated. But again, it escaped cultivation. But yeah, there it is on a tree. What a gorgeous thing, right? And if you come across a cluster at that, like that, first of all, you got to high five whoever you're with because you just scored the mega load. And you can come across big groupings of oysters like this and just be a happy camper. But again, very distinct mushroom. Looks just like the oysters I showed you earlier, except it's yellow. And it can be a pale yellow. But yeah, easy one. Now let's talk about the old shaggy mane. So this one looks great, similar to that green parasol one I showed you earlier. And I actually ate this one for the first time last year. I knew about it. And then when it comes up out of the lawn, which kind of makes you nervous in the first place, it grows solitary, but can also be in tight groups or loose clusters. It's what we refer to as inky cap mushrooms. And I'll show you why they call it inky cap. So you want to harvest them before it opens its little skirt down here, so you can see it's still connected down here. And if you wait even a day or two, it can turn to this, and it's already past its prime. You don't want to eat it anymore. And what happens is it just kind of melts away. And then they actually made ink out of this black ooze that they turn into, hence the name inky caps. But they're perfectly edible. And so seeing it last year, learning about it, I went online. I knew it was, I think it was a shaggy mane. So I went and, okay, what are the ID characteristics? I cut them open in half. And there again, there's one past its prime. You see how it's already starting to turn black and likely still edible, but I didn't want to eat it. I want them fresh like that. So within the clusters I was harvesting, there were a couple that were older like that I just left. But cutting them open, this stalk that you see go all the way up through that mushroom, no other mushroom has that. So that was the distinguishing feature that I looked for, that gave me the confidence that said, okay, I'm cooking you, and I hope I don't die. I know I'm risky that way. But it's a good mushroom. You got something for me, Morgan?
Yes, we have a question. Someone is asking, do oysters come in an orange variety?
I have not seen that. it like cultivated because a lot of people are growing oysters. And if you're looking to grow oysters in a kit, any kit growing oyster mushroom lover would tell you that oysters are the easiest to start out with. And most of the time, the kit you're going to get is the gray oysters. And if you go to the Oriental market, you can buy oyster mushrooms. I haven't seen them in our typical stores, like Super Saver or whatever yet, but certainly the Oriental market carries them, and it's well worth getting them because they're just in a class all by themselves, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know if an orange one. I think there is. Somebody Google it, look it up. Orange oyster mushroom, because I know there's a blue oyster, and that is a gorgeous thing. There's a pink oyster, I believe. There's a number of different species out there. But yeah, here's what the shaggy manes look like all cooked up. They have a lot of water in them, so it takes a while to cook them. Okay, I'm going to try to fly. I got a couple minutes left here. And there's your common inky cap. You've probably all seen this mushroom. It grows in clusters. It's edible, but honestly, cooking them down, there was really nothing left. I don't think it's worth our time to harvest. But there again, past its prime, they just kind of melt away and turn into ink. This is the one I wanted to get to, and we'll close here. This is the honey mushroom, and you got your survey out, right, Morgan?
Yep, we do.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. We'll close on this one. Hopefully, you've learned some stuff today and got a little more confidence. This is another one I hadn't heard of. My friend Luke turned me onto it. And when I got home, man, I trust you, Luke, but I'm still going to look it up and see, is it indeed honey? Why haven't I heard of this thing? I thought they call it honey mushroom because the top of it, somebody kind of squinted their eyes and thought it looked like the color of honey. It's not sweet like honey or anything like that. If you look up this Armorelia, this group of mushrooms arguably is the largest organism on the planet. You can see in Google like Armilia or honey mushroom growing in the wild, and where it grows in Oregon and Washington, where there's a lot more moisture. I mean, the amount of mushrooms, it's just fascinating. It's just crazy. The only thing the poisonous look-alike you could possibly mistake it for is that deadly Gallerina that I showed you earlier. But now you can see the scale of the deadly Gallerina. It's very tiny. Pretty much really hard to confuse the honey mushrooms with this because the honey mushrooms are 3-4 inches across. We were at Indian Cave one fall, and we came across a whole hillside of honey mushrooms in their prime. And one of the distinguishing feature of a honey mushroom, if you see my cursor there, is this skirt that you see. Every stem has this little skirt on it. And the honey's the only one that has that. You see the skirt here again. And there again, you'll often see the white spore print on top of the mushroom underneath it, white underneath. It's a tasty mushroom. I mean, cooked, it has a lot of water in it, so it takes a while to saute and get that water out. But these are ones I cooked up and just very dark in color. So mix that and stir fry, and they're the bomb. So it's a good one to add to your wild edible wish list. And it's also medicinal mushroom. All these mushrooms I've talked about, guys, are just high in nutrients. More and more studies are being done on them. And yeah, I just encourage you to learn more about them and get out there. We all love foraging. I'm just going to quit the screen sharing thing. There we go. Yeah, so just encourage you to learn more about them. You'll be glad you did. They're just a fun thing to do, and appreciate everybody tuning in tonight and learning more about them. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, I do have another one. Somebody also just says thank you and great job. But another question we have two. Are you ever concerned about mushrooms that have been sprayed with chemicals, and what places are safe around Lincoln is one of the questions, and I have another when you're done.
Yeah, I don't think you really have. First of all, nobody's going to go spray a dead tree with a chemical. If we asked ourselves, why would they? If a tree has been sprayed for anything, it's like to keep a pest off of it, right, in town, or Maybe there's, nobody sprays a tree to kill it, right? It's just it's counterintuitive. If we're spraying a tree with a chemical, it's usually an insecticide, and that's to keep bugs off of it. So a dead tree in general is not going to be sprayed, right? Now, you might be saying that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just, people spraying their yard or chemicals in the air. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but spring's coming up. There's going to be a lot of yard chemicals going down. There's going to be a lot of ag chemicals in the air. How do I know where to collect in the springtime? There's probably not a leaf surface or a mushroom that doesn't have a little chemical on it. To put it in perspective, some folks from the Forest Service took leaf samples of oak trees in the spring, summer, fall, and detected dicamba in the leaves. These weren't near fields. They were, this drift can be hundreds of yards, on a windy day, maybe thousands of yards. These chemicals revolatilize after they're sprayed. So even if it's put down on a calm day, we can get a hot day and that chemical revolatilizes and gets blown in with a 45-mile-an-hour wind. Who knows where it came from? So I guess I'm just of the one that's like, oh man, what am I going to do about it, right? And is it going to keep me from harvesting my mushrooms? And will it help to wash them? Shoot, I don't know. It might. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and certainly common sense prevails. If I'm hunting in a woodland lot, and I'm collecting a mushroom in the fall, that grew in the fall, like let's say a box elder mushroom. Common sense tells me no farmer or person is going to be putting down chemicals that late in the year because it's a waste of money. So I can safely harvest knowing that. If I'm harvesting an oyster mushroom, say in late April, early May, when there's a whole lot of chemicals going down, I may want to rethink that. I hope that helps you. It's just, what are we all going to do about it? Insist on better ways of doing things, I guess.
I do have a couple more things. I want to start with someone is saying, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I really appreciate it, Bob.
Thank you.
Another one says, great presentation. I appreciate your knowledge and insight. Thank you. And then a couple more questions. We have someone asking, can you find lion's mane in Nebraska?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think if I know a friend that posted a picture. If you do, man, again, whoever you're with, you need to high five and, put it out there on social media. Be the paparazzi for that lion's mane because it deserves all the attention it gets. But then don't tell anybody where you're at. It's funny. I used to post a lot more pictures, kind of showing off because again, these mushrooms that are just like, they're camera ready. And everybody's always proud showing their pictures. I got to the point where I'm like, wait, I'm telling my competition that they should be going out there hunting mushrooms. So I quit doing that. But anyway, yeah, for sure. I don't know. I've not found one, and I can't remember if a friend has found one. I think they're mostly in the eastern United States.
Okay. We have more coming in. Can you advise how to cook corn smut?
Oh wow. No, I can't because that's one on my bucket list. And man, I remember back in the day growing up, I was a bean walker, and we rogued corn out of cornfields and stuff. This was before, big ag and all this got in the picture. I don't even know if I'd go out and trust corn smut anymore unless, harvesting it in the wild, right? Versus, well, I'm going to grow sweet corn in my backyard. And if I get corn smut, I'm going to eat it. And if anybody has ever been to a market, say a Mexican market here in town, and is able to purchase it, please put it in the chat because if they do, I'm missing out and I just haven't timed it right. So no, I have not cooked with it, and nor have I had the pleasure of eating it, but it's definitely on my bucket list. So if anybody else has, say, ooh, yeah, people, tell us what we're missing out on.
Perfect. This may be the last one unless something else comes in quickly. This one is saying some people claim morels can be found any month from April through November. I have never found them after May. What do you say about that?
Jeez, boy, I hate to say fake news. Did I just say that? Yeah, I don't know, man. I certainly haven't heard that. I don't think it's true. Man, somebody'd have to prove it to me. And I think if that was the case, again, these different sites I belong to, like Morel, I think it's like Morel Hunters of Nebraska, something like that. I would be seeing these people posting it every month, showing off their quarry. And it's the month of May, man. I don't know. They don't reappear in the fall from what I've ever seen or heard. Yeah, it's I shouldn't say the month of May, duh. It's like April, May. What's tough is we get these 97-degree days in March, and it's going to warm up the soil temp, and then the morels, they like it, it's not by, well, it's been dry. Certainly that's going to affect the harvest, right? Or how many are out there, but it's that soil temperature is what they really go by. And people ask, well, do they grow more at the base of a sycamore or the base of a cottonwood or the base of an oak or the base of this and the base of that? I think some authorities out there will say, I like to find them at the base of this. I think that authority is, it's just because of the particular woods they're walking in happen to be dominant with this certain tree, right? So if I'm on the Platte, it's going to be the cottonwood. If I'm in the Missouri, it's going to be the oak, right? And so it just depends what woods you're in, and just again adhere to that soil temperature thing, which is again 53, 50 to 55, yada yada, around that range, and or just belong to a group, and they'll definitely let you know when they're out there.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, but just a fun reminder. And also, thank you to everyone for being here tonight. Thank you, Bob, for your presentation
You're
and the
welcome.
patience at the beginning with some technical errors, but I do appreciate it. And then, just as I will be sharing some follow ups with everyone who attended tonight. So, Bob's email will be included, and I'm sure I can say this with confidence. If you've got more questions, send them his way. But we appreciate your time and everyone being here tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Good night, everybody.
See ya.